what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, and today we're playing more of the Power Shift Seasonal Event, which is an alternate game mode in which every unit in our starting deck will get its power set to its provision cost. That means that low power, but high provision cost units are suddenly way more powerful. Today we are revisiting a deck that we used previously, and adding in one of the new cards that I'm really excited to try out. It's gonna be a lot of fun, so let's go give it a look. So today we'll be playing a Monster's Overwhelming Hunger deck that focuses on consuming Death Wish cards that come back onto the playing field when they get destroyed. And because those units have far more power than usual, every time we do that consumption, we are getting a ton of points. So specifically, I'm referring to Dettlaff Higher Vampire, who normally has 6 base power, but in Power Shift will begin with 10, as well as Ruehin, who would normally have just 4 base power, but in Power Shift also starts with 10. So that's what we did last time, was just consume those cards as many times as possible. But two key things have changed since then. One being that Weavess Incantation has been buffed. Previously, she only had the ability to trigger Death Wish whenever we played a Death Wish unit. However, now she's also another source of consumption, so that's certainly helpful. But more significantly, we have the new card, Arachas Queen, which is also a consumption card, so another way to capitalize on Dettlaff and Ruehin if we consume one of them, and then if we consume Arachas Queen, after that, then we will spawn in another copy of whatever it was the Arachas Queen ate. So that's a way of getting multiple Dettlaffs or multiple Ruehins. And technically, because those copies get spawned in and are not from our starting deck, that means that they will have their usual base power, not the increased base power from Power Shift, but it is still a powerful combo that is a lot of fun to play. So those are the basics. Other than that, we have a ton of consuming units, because we want to be able to consume Dettlaff and Ruehin as many times as possible, and they will keep on coming back out. But if you want to maximize the number of Dettlaffs or the number of Ruehins, then play either Dettlaff first or Ruehin first, then play Weavess Incantation in your range row, but don't use her consumption ability yet. Then play Arachas Queen to consume either Ruehin or Dettlaff, and Weavess will trigger that Death Wish ability, giving you an additional Ruehin or an additional Dettlaff. Then if you're on blue coin, you can use your stratagem on the Arachas Queen and to spawn in another copy of one of those cards. Then on your next turn, play Abaya on the Arachas Queen to trigger it again. And then at that point, you've used all of your additional ways to trigger the Arachas Queen's Death Wish ability, so then you can actually consume her with Weavess. So that's the general idea of the deck, but now I'll flip through to show you what else we have, and we do have Witch's Sabbath, which means that after playing some of those big cards in round 1, we can bring them back in round 2 or round 3. Assuming you have Weavess in that group, you're going to want to do this in the range row so that Weavess still has her additional ability working, and bear in mind that if you do bring back either Ruehin or Dettlaff, they will gain Doomed, which means they will not go back into your graveyard when they get destroyed, they will just cease to exist. But we have a solution for that we'll talk about later on. Then Cave Troll is useful, particularly because we are going to have some really big units, and there are a lot of Geralts going around. So if you have someone that keeps on consuming all those Ruehins or all those Dettlaffs, then protect them with the Cave Troll. Caranthir can also create additional copies of either Dettlaff or Ruehin. Then Kayran is a good round finisher, in particular at the end of round 3, because as I was saying before, we are going to have a lot of very tall units, so if our opponent has Geralt of Rivia or Spores, then they're going to get a ton of value out of that. But if you consume all your big units at the end of the round with Kayran, that means that most of your power is going toward this one immune unit that is much harder for your opponent to take out. Then Imperial Manticore is a backup plan in case you don't get either Ruehin or Dettlaff, then you can create additional copies of this. Then Wererat is one of our best consumers because it will automatically consume 1 card per turn, so try to save this for a long round in which you are trying to maximize the value from Ruehin or Dettlaff. Barbegazi for more consumption. Slyzard is our other top consumer along with the Wererat. What you're going to want to do here is put the Wererat in one row and put the Slyzard in the other, and then whatever ends up in the Slyzard's row, you consume with the Slyzard, and whatever ends up in the Wererat's row, you consume with Wererat. Then we're looking at the small bronze Death Wish units that, for the most part, you don't want to have to play. But the Pellar is significant because, as I was saying before, when we bring cards back with Witch's Sabbath, they will get doomed. And so if you bring back Dettlaff or Ruehin, you're probably going to want to consume that card and have it come back on the board. That means you have to remove that doomed status by purifying it with the Pellar before you do the consumption. But once you get rid of the doomed, then you're fine to keep on consuming those cards. Then the hybrid is actually a solid engine given how much consumption we have, so this can actually get fairly big as well. So there's a look at the deck, and like I said, it is all focused on creating additional copies of some of the most powerful Death Wish units, and then consuming them like crazy. I'm excited to check this out, so let's go see it in action. Alright, so going up against Nilfgaard here, and we'll go first. Okay, and we have the Arachas Queen. We don't necessarily have a great target for it to consume, but if we can get one of those, then we have Weavess, so we can power up Arachas Queen, and Abaya for that same purpose. Let's get rid of the Bridge Troll, and Barbegazi gives us more consumption, but that's still not really what we're looking for here. Nor is the Archespore, that's why I tried switching it out. Okay, we might have to rely on Matta for that ideal Death Wish unit in that case, but we can't play her on turn 1. So I think we do start with Weavess. And they'll immediately lock her. But technically, she's a luxury, not a necessity, so we can carry on. But let's make sure that now we use Matta. And we get Dettlaff. So that's one of the cards we're looking for, was either him or Ruehin. And Red Haze, I mean, yes, we were required to play those cards next to each other. So now we play Dettlaff. And we don't use Urn of Shadows on him. It doesn't work on him. We're saving that for the Arachas Queen. Okay, that certainly hurt, especially because we put a lot of effort into getting Dettlaff there. And had we anticipated that they might heatwave him, we could have used Caranthir to create a copy of Dettlaff instead, and still kept our original Dettlaff. But we still have a point advantage here. So although this is less than ideal, we could certainly still make this work. So why don't we go with Barbegazi here. And they'll use teleportation to, well, I mean, relock that Barbegazi, but you still only have 4 points. So tell you what I think we do now. We play the Wererat in the melee row. It will consume Barbegazi. This Urn of Shadows without a Death Wish unit may actually become a pretty big problem. Xavier. Now that's also potentially an issue, because they can start banishing our units here, and we have Witch's Sabbath, and we intend to use it. And that is why I was willing to play Wererat to begin with. So we're going to do something really unconventional here. We're going to use Arachas Queen to consume Weavess, which they are probably about to banish with Xavier, but we're going to create additional copies of it, so shouldn't be a huge problem because we do this. You get a Weavess out here. Then we could even use Weavess to consume Arachas Queen. Now, of course, she's in the melee row, which is not ideal, but there is a reason for that. Because I do still want Wererat to continue consuming stuffs, but double Weavess in the melee row does look very silly. So needless to say, this is not the usual way we would play, but then again, they've locked and banished all of our key cards, so thanks Nilfgaard, we'll still find a way to make it work. Okay, now they're gonna put Spying on that Wererat. Now, all I want to do here is just drop the hybrid. Not a huge play, but it will get some boosts as we have the Wererat going, and I would have used the Wererat's ability to spawn in a bunch of little rats, but now that he is very highly boosted, that is no longer a good idea, because that would have given us even more units to consume, but now we don't have enough space. So we'll leave it at this. And that is probably going to be the last card that we want to play here. So they'll pass, and that does give us the round 1 win. Quick check here, what do we still have in our graveyard? We do have Arachas Queen and Weavess Incantation, and then we will get, I think, Wererat will be the next biggest unit in our graveyard that we'd bring back with Witch's Sabbath. Wererat's a little bit concerning because it could immediately consume some of those cards, and we'd rather that not happen, at least in the case of Weavess, but We shall see. At the very least, we have dodged what originally looked like it was going to be a very tough round 1. Okay, so we draw into another hybrid, and then Royal Decree, along with Imperial Manticore. Now, Imperial Manticore could become one of our consumption targets, but we'd really like Ruehin. We could get Ruehin with Royal Decree, but maybe we try something other than a hybrid here. Okay, Cave Troll is also a little bit helpful. Now, we did play one more card than our opponent in round 1, so I think we probably dry pass here. Oh, okay, I don't like the squirrel, though. Don't like that you keep on banishing our cards, because we do have Witch's Sabbath. Okay, so to double check, it looks like they banished one of our Weavesses, so that means that as things currently stand, Witch's Sabbath would give us Arachas Queen, which is great, Wererat, which is questionable, because it might consume something unexpectedly, and then Barbegazi, which is okay, but certainly not fantastic. Let's get rid of the Bridge Troll. Kayran is potentially a very good finisher. Let's dump the Desert Banshee and Ruehin. Okay, that's very nice. Alright, they'll start with Seditious Aristocrats. Interesting. Given how this is Nilfgaard we're talking about here, let's play it a little bit safe and begin with a Cave Troll before we do anything too special. Okay, they'll give him Spying, so that'll boost up their Seditious Aristocrats, but more likely it is a setup for Terra Nova later on. Alright, so their graveyard does not have anything too big here, so Witch's Sabbath won't backfire on us too hard. If we go in the range row, then Xavier is not going to be a problem, because he's only going to be able to banish from their graveyard. So I think we give it a shot here, and we see what we end up with, and perhaps more importantly, what order the cards show up in. Okay, so it does mean that Wererat will automatically consume Barbegazi, which is not atrociously awful. But having the Wererat over here to give us some automatic consumption is quite nice. Okay, they'll go with Matta. And they will create a copy of the Cave Troll on their side using their leader ability. Now, we weren't going to do anything to target their cards anyway, but it is still a relatively big unit for them. So now let's go with Caranthir into, we could do Imperial Manticore and destroy their lowest card, which, as things currently stand, might be the Turncoat, which would be decent, or the Squirrel, which is not so great, so I think we go with Ruehin instead. So that means Wererat will automatically consume Ruehin right now. And they have Emir. Okay, so yeah, this is looking a whole lot like trying to set up Terra Nova. I mean, I suppose Emir also does set up Seditious Aristocrats as well. Okay, and before we get too carried away with all the consumption, let's take this opportunity to sneak in a hybrid, because that will get boosted whenever we do that consumption. And Ruehin comes out in our melee row, which means this Wererat will not be able to consume it. But that's what the Slyzard is for. Okay, coup de grace. And, well, the Cave Troll does have Spying. So you can create a copy of him there. But now let's get our original Ruehin going as quickly as possible by putting him next to the Wererat. And we could use a leader ability charge to get rid of this Ruehin because there's nothing to consume it right now. I suppose that's probably worth doing. Once again, naturally it goes into the melee row, but we will eventually get this Slyzard down here. Okay, it's Damien for another round of their leader ability, so they could potentially use that to lock Ruehin if, after consuming Ruehin, it is still in this melee row. But even if they do that, we still have a potential solution. So now let's get the Slyzard down. But because that takes a turn before it can use its consumption ability, let's use our last leader ability charge on Ruehin here. As we were saying, we'd like for that not to be the target of Damien. Oh, but our 10.1 and our 4.1 end up in the melee row there, where they are not protected by the Cave Troll, and I don't love that. And locking that Ruehin is exactly what they will do. Okay, then they have, presumably, all of the Wolf School trio. Yeah, they do. Alright, but we do still have a solution for this lock. If we go with Royal Decree into Pellar, put him next to the Wererat just to give the Wererat another thing to eat, because it's been a little while since Wererat's had some food. Then we can now use the Slyzard to consume that Ruin. Okay, then it is Terra Nova, as we expected. Now, what do they choose to go with here? It's a Slyzard, interestingly enough. Well, I mean, I suppose they do have Ruin, but they don't have a lot of space to use Ruin here, and they don't know if Ruin is going to end up in the correct row to combine with the Slyzard going forward. So we'll see if that works out for them. But now, let's eat the big Ruin again. And then I suppose, since once again Wererat doesn't have any food, let's feed him the Bridge Troll. Start going into the melee row. We have 2 Ruins there. We want some to end up over here, next to the Oh, Anna Henrietta. Okay, now that might be why you were willing to take Ruin, plus the Slyzard. Now, your Ruin is only the 4-power version, not the 10-power version, so ours is better. Okay, but we do still have a way to give the Wererat some stuff to eat, even with all the Ruins showing up here in the melee row. So once again, we'll consume the 10. But what we'll do here is we'll play Abaya and use that to trigger the Arachas Queen, which will give us a Weavess Incantation, which can actually then consume this Ruin. And then this is going to get eaten by the Wererat. So as nice as it would have been to have had additional Weavesses out there, the reason why I did not do that earlier was because I knew it was going to get immediately eaten by the Wererat. Okay, then it's Phoenix, and interestingly, they are out of space here. They will consume Ruin, but Ruin will come back and take that space. Like so. So maybe they have a special card as their last play, but if it's a unit, then they can't use it at all. And the most dangerous of special cards at this point would probably be a Spores. They can't use it to hit the Wererat, but they could hit the Slyzard. So what I'm thinking here is that we deliberately go with the Kayran and consume all of our biggest units, and in doing so, that means most of our boosts will be on a card that they can't target because it has immunity. So I think we go for that. And that means this Wererat is hiding behind the Cave Troll, so I think we're fine with that one. So what is this last play? They do have the leader ability charges that they stole from us, but it also doesn't really work when you have no space. I suppose they can consume Ruin here, and then they do have enough room to play whatever this is. Now, we're hoping it's not a Yurden or an Igni, because that would really hurt. It's Fangs the Empire, which does not give them enough poison. And as I was saying, leader ability does not work when your row is full. So they just lost points by using that. And they will lose points here as well. I mean, they could have had a bit of a lead there. They do still get Ruin back, which means they have a 1-point lead. But of course, if we use Imperial Manticore here and put it next to our Wererat, Wererat will then consume it. And in doing so, destroy their lowest card, and we'll get a little bit more boost. So we'll take the win. Alright, so going up against monsters here, and they'll go first. Alright, and this hand is looking really nice. We have a good consumption target with Ruehin. We have Arachas Queen to consume that, and then we can use Weavess Incantation to get even more of them. Then even more support with Abaya, and Caranthir means even more copies. Matta can give us better cards, more consumption as well. Hybrid can get boosted from all that. Imperial Manticore is a backup consumption plan. This looks really good. And of course, they are also Overwhelming Hunger, so they might be doing something kind of similar here. They're going with Haunt. Let's start a little bit slow here, because that is, of course, a big commitment for them to throw down a 14 provision Haunt on turn 1 of round 1. So let's just go with the Hybrid for now, and of course, it can get boosted a lot once we start doing all of our consumption. But if we want to keep round 1 short and avoid committing anything big, then it is also a way to do that. A Harpy Egg, which they will consume. Alright, and tell you what is kind of tempting here is actually going with Caranthir to create an additional Imperial Manticore. And since their smallest unit is currently a 10, doing a little bit of that. Okay, it's a ghoul, which will also become a 10. But I think we might be able to keep things relatively small here if we go with Barbegazi. They'll go with the Desert Banshee. Now we choose Matta. And that'll give us Witch's Sabbath. And we could consume just for the sake of giving ourselves a few more boosts on the hybrid, but let's save those charges just in case we do want to go further. They'll go in Neuromancy. Into Dettlaff. Okay, so this is looking like it could even be our original version of this deck. Focusing a little bit more on the Bronze Deathwish units and Haunt. So unfortunately, now that they have these 1-power rats out here, Imperial Manticore is basically out of the question, because I was trying to see if we could avoid committing Ruehin, Weavess Incantation, and Arachas Queen all in round 1, but it is looking like we might need to start doing that. In which case, let's go with Ruehin here. And that is in part why we saved some of these Barbegazi charges, so that we could immediately consume that. Okay, then it's another Desert Banshee. So now we go with Weavess. And I think we have just enough consumption charges that we actually could choose to consume Ruehin here. As long as we save this charge. And then they'll go Whispering Hillock, and that will give them a Succubus. And now this is where we break out Arachas Queen, because with her, we can consume Ruehin. And Ruehin is an insect, so that means we'll get some more drones out here as well. And that 4-power Ruehin is coming in because we've triggered Arachas Queen's Deathwish ability with Weavess. But that does not include the Ruehin that we actually consumed, which only now comes out. Okay, they're going with their own Barbegazi. And so now we can go with Abaya here. And trigger another round of Arachas Queen. And consume this Ruehin once again. They'll go with their Ruehin. It is, of course, a very big card to commit, but they do have the consumption to eat it. But notably, they do not catch up to us here, and they have played one more card than us, so for that reason, we really should pass. They'll go with the Mayorlorn. And use a leader ability charge to get rid of Ruehin. But they'll forfeit because they realize they had to dig themselves into too deep a hole and they didn't think they could come back from it. So there's a look at Monster's Deathwish deck for the new Power Shift seasonal event. If you liked the video, then make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and leave a comment down below to let me know which other cards, archetypes, and factions you'd like us to experiment with next. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.